So here in the beginning, I'm taking a piece of scrap yarn and tying an overhand knot in it so that I can attach it to the first peg on the warping board. But before I attach it to the warping board, I need to measure it the length that I want my warp to be. Some people use tape measure, some people use, like I am, a yardstick. Doesn't matter what you use to measure it, as long as you measure it the length that you need. For me, that length is 4 yards. So I go back and forth on the yardstick 4 times. At the very end, I just pinch where the 4-yard mark is and tie that in another overhand knot. And this is the yarn I used to make my scrap. So now that I have it cut and measured and ready to put on the board, I'm going to go ahead and put it on the first peg and then figure out what path I need to follow to measure the rest of my warp. Now I know that my warping board is exactly, well, not exactly, but close to 1 yard wide. So I can just go back and forth on those first few pegs. But this is an important part. Say you have a 2 yard and 30-inch warp. 2 yards and 30 inches isn't going to fit back and forth straight across on warping board that is 1 yard wide. So you have to figure out a different path to follow to make sure that your warp, when you actually measure it, is that 2 yards and 30 inches. Here you see me tying an overhand knot in the end of my first color. And I'm just going to follow the path that I previously made with my scrap yarn. Just want to make sure that I follow it all the way. Now, something that I didn't really get a very good view of, unfortunately, in this video was, you'll notice when I get to the very top, except for when I make a mistake, I'm going under and over those 2 pegs in the middle. And what that does is it makes my cross. You'll notice here I figured out that I had made a mistake, and I'm pulling it back to fix it, measure this correctly. And I still haven't fixed it. And now I finally figure it out. So there you'll see over, under, over, under, over, under, or under, over, I should say. And again, just following the same path that I had been with the rest of it. Almost made the same mistake again. And here I'm almost done measuring the first color, the red. You'll also notice when I'm warping that I'm not trying to make sure that I lay the threads right next to each other. I'm just putting them on an empty spot on the peg and then pushing them back to lay next to the other threads once I get back to them. Here I am, finally finishing up the red, and shortly about to move on to the next color, which is, I believe they call it red yellow. It's an orange color. Now, I'm not going to show you guys warping every single color in this 17 color GAMP with 30 ends per color. That would just take forever to show you. And different from my previous videos, I have not sped this up. This is normal speed. Total over 2 days, because I take breaks so that I don't hurt my back or my shoulders. It took me probably about 2 hours to measure all 510 ends. You can see here I've reached the end of this warp. I'm at 30 ends. I clip it off and tie an overhand knot and put it back on that last peg before joining the, not joining, but adding the next color. And here I've picked up the next color, which is an orange. And I tie an overhand knot on the end of that, put it on the first peg, and start following the path again. Having a bit of a problem tying that knot though. And again, I've made an error in my warping. I've lost count of how many that I've put on. So you're going to see here, I'm going to use the cross to count how many threads I've actually measured at this point. Makes it easier because you can count by twos. And here I notice my mistake and take a step back to fix it. And then promptly make the same mistake. This time I get it right though. So you can see right here, I made a mistake in measuring this one thread. It doesn't follow the same path as the rest of them. I counted up here and I have 30 threads, and down here I have 32. So I messed up somewhere and I'm going to have to pull off what's in front of it to figure out where that mistake was. I'm not going to show you me tying on all of the choke ties. They'll be fairly obvious once they're on there, but I will show you chaining the warp off of the warping board. I apologize for the less than stellar light. I live in a basement and so I don't have very great lighting, but you'll notice that I have tied on a bunch of choke ties, one on each of the 4 parts of my cross, one on the end, both ends, and then a bunch in the middle. So what I'm going to show you now is how to chain this off so that it doesn't get all wonky and tangled and make a mess. Just take the end, pull it off, stick your hand through the hole, grab what's in front of you, and pull it through. And then keep doing that until you have the whole thing off the loom. not off the loom, sorry, off the warping board. Now, because I have those 4 ties on the cross, I don't have to worry about this getting tangled while I set it aside to fix my problem string. Okay, so I unwound the bad string and wound it back onto the cone and to the problem. When I rewarped it correctly, you can tell I have all of this extra yarn that would have caused a problem when I was warping. Would have had to eventually cut it off anyway, but I might as well do it now before I warp the loom instead of later and have a tangled mess. Now, because I'm getting ready to start measuring out the gray matter Gamp kit, I'm going to go ahead and take the other part of the color kit off so that I don't get things mixed up as far as the order in which they need to go on the loom. So again, let me go back to the beginning. You take the loop off and put your hand through it. Then you grab the next part, pull that loop off over your hand. Put your hand through the new hole, grab the next part, pull it off. Through the new hole, grab the next part, pull it off. All the way to the beginning. Now, when I started, I took a piece of scrap yarn and measured that 4 yards so that I could map out where I was going to put this on my board. So I want you to watch my hands as I move back and forth across the loom. You'll notice that my hands never really pass center of my body when I'm moving the thread. So you move it to the center and then out, to the center and then out. This helps to keep your shoulders from getting tired. Instead of doing this and only using one arm, which will tire me out very fast, if I just go back and forth, making sure to meet in the middle, it'll save my arms from getting too tired. If you need to stop and take a minute, like to stop the recording on your camera, if you just wind your thread around the last peg, it'll keep it where it is. Okay, one last time. This is how you chain off of the loom. Take the end, put your hand through the hole, grab it, and pull it through. Grab it and pull it through. Grab it and pull it through until you reach the other end of the warp, or the beginning. There is a chained warp ready to be taken over to my loom.